I want to start with a question. Have you ever met someone like this? Someone who, even when criticized to their face, backed into a corner in front of a crowd, or told things that would make most people explode or burst into tears, just looks back with a calmness that feels almost strange. No raised voice, no excuses, no shaking hands, no need to prove anything at all. And the funny thing is, it's that very calmness that starts to make the person across from them feel uneasy. I've thought about this for a long time. Why is being calm such a powerful thing? Why is the person who keeps their cool usually the one in control? Not the loudest person, and not the one with the sharpest arguments. Today, we're going to dive into that. Not to learn how to bottle up our feelings, not to be cold or distant, but to understand a kind of power that psychology calls emotional mastery, and why it might be the most important skill that no school ever taught you. In 161 AD, a man became the Roman emperor. He ruled the largest empire the world had ever seen, facing war, disease, rebellion, and betrayal from those closest to him. But what's remarkable is, according to historical records, he rarely lost his cool. It wasn't because he didn't have feelings. It was because every morning when he woke up, he reminded himself of one thing. Today, I will meet people who are annoying. Someone will betray me. Things will not go my way. Be ready, and don't be surprised. That man was Marcus Aurelius, and the writings he left behind, now known as Meditations, are still read by millions of people today. Not because he was an emperor, but because he was a human being who knew how to exist in the middle of chaos without being swallowed by it. I'm telling you this story because I want you to understand one thing from the start. Being calm isn't about the absence of emotion. That is the biggest misconception most people have. A calm person isn't someone who doesn't feel pain. They aren't someone who never gets angry or afraid. They feel all of it, but they don't let those emotions take the wheel. They are the ones staying in the driver's seat. In psychology, this is called emotional regulation. Neuroscience has shown that this isn't just a personality trait you're born with. It's a skill you can learn, practice, and grow, just like a muscle. But there's another concept I want you to remember, because it's going to come up a lot today. Neuroscientists call it the window of tolerance. This is the psychological zone where you can process your feelings without being overwhelmed. In this zone, you don't spiral into panic, and you don't completely shut down. Think of it like this. Each of us has a cup. When life pours things into it, stress, conflict, criticism, or pain, the cup of someone with a narrow window of tolerance overflows right away. But for someone with a wide window, they still feel the weight, but it doesn't spill over. And that extra space is exactly where their logic stays alive. Someone who is so calm that it makes others uneasy is usually someone with a very large cup. And they weren't born with it, they built it. Now for the bigger question. Why does staying calm make the other person feel so uncomfortable? The answer lies in the psychology of power. When you expect someone to get angry, and they don't, you lose your leverage over them. You don't know what they're thinking or where their weaknesses are. In any conflict, the person who stays calm is the one who holds all the cards. They are the observers, while you are the one exposing yourself. That is why Marcus Aurelius could rule an empire. It wasn't just through his army, but through his ability to never let the chaos outside invade his peace inside. Before we talk about how to stay calm, I want to take some time to really understand the opposite. Why we lose it. You can't fix something if you don't know where it's broken. Let me tell you about Matt. Matt is 28 and works at a design firm. He is smart, passionate, and honestly, very good at what he does. But there was one thing everyone around him noticed before he did. He was incredibly easy to trigger. One day in a meeting, his boss made a wrong comment about a report Matt had worked very hard on. Matt knew he was right, so he pushed back. Immediately, his voice tightened, his face turned red, and his hands started to shake. The argument lasted 15 minutes. Matt won the argument. But after the meeting ended, no one remembered that Matt was right. They only remembered one thing. He lost control in front of everyone. What happened to Matt? Why did he react that way? Even though he knew he was right, the answer starts inside the brain. Neuroscientist and psychologist Daniel Goleman, the man who popularized emotional intelligence EQ, describes a phenomenon he calls an amygdala hijack. The amygdala is a primitive part of the brain that specializes in processing threats. When it senses danger, whether it's a tiger or a piece of criticism, it triggers an immediate fight or flight response. In that split second, it hijacks control from the prefrontal cortex, the area responsible for rational thinking. In other words, Matt didn't just lose his cool. His brain was hijacked, and for those few seconds, he was no longer reacting like a mature adult. He was reacting like a creature under threat. But why is a boss's comment treated as a threat? This is where the second reason comes in. Researchers at Stanford University discovered this. When someone criticizes your perspective, your brain reacts almost the same way it does to a physical attack. This isn't just a metaphor. Neurologically, the areas of the brain that light up overlap significantly. The reason is that your point of view isn't just an opinion. It's a part of your identity. When someone dismisses that view, your brain understands it as you being dismissed. This is an ego threat, and it is much more powerful than you might think. But there is a third reason, perhaps the deepest of them all. And I want to quote someone who understood this by living it, not just by reading about it. Viktor Frankl was an Austrian psychiatrist of Jewish descent. He survived 4 Nazi concentration camps, including Auschwitz, the place where he lost his parents, his wife, and his brother. After the war, he wrote a book that millions of people consider one of the most important works of the 20th century. In it, he wrote a sentence that I believe every one of us needs to read at least once in our lives. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. Most of us don't even know that space exists. We live on autopilot. We feel what people say, and we react instantly to what they do. The gap between what happened and how I act is almost zero. And that is exactly why we lose our cool. Frankl discovered that space while in a concentration camp, a place where he had absolutely no physical freedom, but he found something that no one could ever take away: the ability to choose how to respond to what was happening to him. If he could do that in a place like that, then we have no reason not to learn how to do it in our own lives. I want to tell you the story of Katie. Katie is a marketing manager at a media agency. At 32, she is smart, careful, and highly respected, but there was someone in her office, let's call him T, and Katie could never quite figure out why she kept falling into his traps. T wasn't loud. He didn't criticize her directly, but T always knew exactly how to push her buttons. A quiet remark just as the boss looked over, a strange smile right after her presentation, or an accidental question asked when Katie wasn't fully prepared, and Katie would react every single time. Katie ended up damaging the professional reputation she had spent years building. It took nearly a year for Katie to realize what T had understood from the beginning. The person who is easily triggered is the easiest person to control. Katie's story isn't rare. I'm sharing it because many of us are living a version of it right now. There might not be an actual villain, but we are being led around by external triggers without even realizing it. And the consequences go far beyond just our professional image. Researchers at the University of California conducted a series of tests on how people judge leadership potential. The result: people who frequently show strong, reactive emotions, even if they are actually more talented, are consistently rated lower in leadership ability compared to those who stay calm. It's not that calm people are smarter, it's that uncontrolled emotions act like a fog, hiding your real skills. People around you stop seeing your talent. All they see is your instability. In our personal lives, with family, friends, or partners, the consequences are quieter but even more painful. When you are prone to outbursts, no matter how much you love them, those people will slowly start to walk on eggshells around you. They stop sharing what is real. They choose only safe topics. You end up feeling lonely even when you're with the people closest to you, not understanding why the distance between you keeps growing. This is what psychology calls relationship erosion. It isn't loud. There are no obvious milestones. It's just a little bit every day, until one day you look back and realize you are standing all alone. And there is another consequence, one that people rarely talk about because it happens inside the body, hidden from the naked eye. Every time you lose your cool, your adrenal glands pump cortisol, the stress hormone, into your bloodstream. In the short term, this helps you react faster. But when this becomes chronic, year after year, the results include memory loss, a weakened immune system, and poor sleep. Then there is the most heartbreaking irony of all. It makes your ability to control your emotions even worse. Over time, cortisol actually shrinks the prefrontal cortex, the very part of your brain that serves as your emotional regulator. In other words, every time you lose your cool without learning how to handle it, you are actually making it harder for yourself to stay calm next time. It's a cycle, a trap that many people spend their entire lives in without even realizing it. But here is what I want you to take away from this. It is not your fault that your brain works this way. It's biology. It's evolution. The amygdala is not your enemy. It's what kept your ancestors alive for thousands of years. The only problem is, the modern world isn't full of tigers anymore, but your brain still reacts as if it is, and that can change. I want to be straight with you. What I'm about to share isn't magic. It's not just positive thinking or the generic take a deep breath advice you've heard 100 times that never seems to work. These are neuroscience-based techniques, researched and proven, and more importantly, they are simple enough to start using today. The first technique, naming the storm. Neuroscientist Daniel Siegel studied this and called it name it to tame it. When you are feeling a strong emotion, anger, anxiety, shame, and you give it a specific name, I'm feeling angry, or I'm afraid of being rejected. The activity in your amygdala drops immediately, while your prefrontal cortex is activated once again. By simply putting a label on what you're feeling, you're shifting from being the emotion to observing it. You aren't the anger anymore, you are the person noticing the anger. That tiny shift is where your power begins. Why? Because naming the emotion forces your brain to observe instead of just experiencing it. You take a step out of the storm and watch it from the outside, and that one step alone is often enough to keep you from saying something you'll regret. Here's how to use it. When you feel like you're about to lose your cool, instead of speaking or reacting right away, stop for half a second and tell yourself in your head, "This is anger. I see you." It might sound strange, but your brain doesn't care if you say it out loud or silently. The effect is the same. The second technique, breathing in a way the brain listens. This isn't just regular belly breathing. Dr. Andrew Huberman from Stanford University popularized a technique called the physiological sigh. Here's how you do it. Take a deep breath in through your nose, then quickly take a second, shorter inhale right after, before letting out a very long, slow exhale through your mouth. That double inhale fully reopens the tiny air sacs in your lungs that collapse when you are stressed. And that long exhale activates the parasympathetic nervous system, your body's rest and digest mode, faster than almost any other method. Dr. Huberman's research shows that even just one of these breaths can significantly lower your heart rate and cortisol levels. This isn't just for meditation. It's for that exact moment when someone says something that makes you want to snap. Before you open your mouth, take just one breath like this. Just one. The third technique, the 24-hour strategy. This isn't my idea. It's a rule used by some of the calmest leaders in history. Never respond to anything important within 24 hours unless you absolutely have to. When you get a text, an email, or a comment that makes you angry or hurt, your brain is being hijacked by the amygdala. Everything you write or say in that state will come from a place of defensiveness and a bruised ego. But if you wait 24 hours, or even just sleep on it, your prefrontal cortex has time to analyze the situation properly. You will find yourself writing a completely different answer. It will be the answer of someone who is making a choice, not someone who is being controlled. This isn't avoiding the problem. This is strategy. The fourth technique, seeing yourself from the outside. Ethan Kross, a psychologist at the University of Michigan and author of the book Chatter, studied a technique that is simple yet surprisingly effective. Instead of asking yourself, "What am I doing?" or "How should I handle this?" try using your own name in those questions. What is Matt feeling right now? Or what should Katie do in this situation? It might sound a bit strained, but the research is very clear. When you use your own name instead of the pronoun I, your brain automatically creates psychological distance from the emotion you are feeling. You begin to handle the situation like an observer, like a good friend giving you advice, instead of being swept away by your own internal whirlpool. Kross calls this distanced self-talk. In clinical trials, people who use this technique consistently show less anxiety, make better decisions, and recover from stress much faster. I want to add one more thing before we finish this part. These 4 techniques aren't a perfect fix for everything. Life is far more complicated than any list could ever cover. But here is what I really want you to understand. Calmness is not a destination. It's a habit. Every time you choose to pause instead of reacting instantly, every time you name your emotion instead of letting it drive you, and every time you take a breath before you speak, you are training your brain for a new reflex. You are building a new neural pathway, and over time, that path becomes wider, more familiar, and more natural. Your window of tolerance can grow, one day at a time. There is a Japanese saying that I really love: still waters run deep. Usually, the loudest person in the room isn't the most powerful. The one who reacts the fastest isn't always the wisest. And the person who can keep their cool while everything around them is falling apart, that is the person everyone eventually turns to. Today, we've covered a lot. We talked about Marcus Aurelius, who prepared his mind for betrayal every single morning. We saw Matt, who lost control of a meeting because his brain was hijacked. We looked at Katie, who realized she was being manipulated by her own emotional triggers. And we remembered Viktor Frankl, who found the ultimate human freedom in the middle of a concentration camp. All of them teach us one thing: being calm is not about being passive. It's not about being cold, and it's definitely not about bottling things up. Staying calm is proof that you are strong enough to not let the chaos outside decide how you feel on the inside. And that, to me, is one of the greatest freedoms a human being can ever achieve. This week, I only ask one thing of you. You don't need to change everything at once. Just pick one of the 4 techniques we talked about today, and try it once. Just once. Then, pay attention to what changes. Not in other people, but in yourself, because the calmest person in the room isn't the one who has nothing to lose. They are the ones who know exactly what they are holding on to. Thank you for being here today, and I'll see you in the next episode.